Alright, howdy y'all, I'm Ice Gold, and if you haven't been living under a rock for the past couple days, you would know that there is a jewel audit coming to the game shortly, with the Wallaru update expected to come late next month. So, in a stream done by Ratbeard, there was a clip talking about all of the different jewels and how they're going to be changed when the update comes out. So there have been a number of changes that Ratbeard talked about in a Twitch stream that he did the other day. So we might as well go ahead and look over that.
The thing that happened yesterday is I finished. I use the term loosely. Finished the stat maxes for level 170, which includes the jewel audit. To reiterate the jewel audit, in case anybody wants to summarize it, we're going to move the stats that appear on the different jewels around, right? To put things where they should be. We're going to add some stats to jewels. We'll be adding a lot more health to square jewels, and we'll be adding damage as a stat to the circle jewels. We're trying to make your choice of jewels better.
So adding damage percentage values to circle slots and health to square slots. This, I think, could be a good change, because, you know, like he says, it's to give more customizability to your gear. And I think that's fine. You know, if you want to add more damage at the cost this appears, go for it. It might not help you when you're questing, but it looked flashier for sure. I mean, I would finally be able to get over 200 damage on my main school, so that'd be kind of nice. And then the health on the square sockets. I know he gets into this in a bit, but this would mainly be affecting advanced content, because other designers have gone out and said that flat resist sockets or square jewels, like the one I have here that gives me plus 50 flat resist fire, those are going to be going away from advanced content only. But my impression is that the health jewels are going to be available for PvE use as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops, and you know, I think he even says it at some point in the video. The PvE crowd is going to really like this change because, you know, there's no detriment to what they want to do.
And then we're going to put the jewel slots onto the gear only where it should appear according to the template. Hopefully all that makes sense.
What he means by this is, let's take my crystalline Eon ring, for example. The intended idea here is, because the Eon ring is an offensive piece of gear, I mean 16% damage, that's kind of wild, you might be able to see 2 circle sockets on here, at the cost of square and probably even the tier socket. And then, you know, I think that's totally fine. Offensive rings, and just pieces of gear in general, I think having this will be a nice little touch. It'll allow offensive builds to shine better with offensive pieces of gear. Something like, you know, the Dragoon Amulet, for example. This might get another square socket, even, because the Dragoon Amulets are defensive pieces of gear. And the wands, even. I mean, these have had square sockets for, I want to say, just as long as I can remember. But imagine having a circle socket or a triangle socket on your wand. I think that would be pretty damn crazy. And I think that, imagine adding 6 pierce to your Eon wand. I think that would make for some interesting, you know, balancing, but it would be on brand with the set, as opposed to having this awkward square socket that, you know, I never unlock. I mean, I think this one came with it, but I never unlock this because it's just one socket, and it's a square socket. But if this was a circle socket, I would always unlock it because, circle sockets giving offensive stats as an ice, I could really use some of that. So if, the new Wallaru and Wizard101's have circle sockets, maybe triangle sockets for utility, I think that would be a pretty good change.
And I guess the last thing I'd say is some jewels you'll have more copies of them. So, for example, you may have 5 potential triangle slots, as an example. Now you'll have to sacrifice an awful lot to do that. To get 5 of any particular slot, you'd have to run 5 pieces of utility gear, for example.
So, it was like I was saying, having, pieces of offensive gear like the Eon Wand, the Eon of Fame, and the Eon Ring. You could have, 1 circle socket here, 2 circle sockets here, and then 2 circle sockets here, and just like that, you have 30 pierce in jewels, or maybe, 15 to 20 extra damage. Crit, if you wanted to go that route. Outgoing healing. And, well, outgoing healing might be reaching a little bit. I feel like that might get taken off of circle sockets. If circle is meant to be offensive and square is supposed to be defensive with, triangle being utility. But, point is, you could really just stack a bunch of, circle sockets, or just sockets of the same kind. If you wanted to do a hyper defensive setup, like say for example you had the, Dragoon Wand. that's a defensive, quote unquote defensive one that I could see happening. The Dragoon of Fame, I remember that it didn't really give as much damage. It used to not give pip chance. Actually, it still doesn't give pip chance. I don't know what I'm saying. And then the Dragoon Amulet, these are already still kind of good. And then something like the Dragoon Ring. And, these wouldn't be super offensive pieces, but you could get a total of, I don't know, man. I want to say maybe 6 or 7 square slots across all these, if you were to do that. And then additionally with square socket decks, you could go for 8. So if you wanted to, you could get so much extra, health, incoming healing, crit block if you really wanted to go that route. But yeah, I think it's extra customizability. That is something that I will always advocate for, and I think that this is a really great place to start with that.
Which makes it difficult to get them, but you could. But we'll continue to manage the stat maxes with the level scaling. So again, it's going to be a big party for PvE, where we don't use the stat scaling, but for advanced content, we're trying to make it not really breakable. So you'll have options. But there's a lot of health on those jewels, by the way. I want to say it ranges from about 1,500 for Storm to over 2,000 for Life. So.
Now, just to clarify, he doesn't mean 1,500 to 2,000, depending on school, for every square socket. He means, that much in total, depending on how many sockets you could have. Like, I think what he's thinking of is, if you have 5 square sockets, you could see 2,000 extra health if you're on Life, and I think that's fine. And he sent a message in the Test Realm Discord saying that, it wouldn't be that drastic. It would just be like a few hundred per jewel. So, even if you're running my setup with offensive, defensive, offensive, you would still have, 2 defensive sockets on your defensive amulet. So, that's, for an ice, I would imagine I would get maybe close to 800 health just off of those 2 jewels, which I think would be fine, because it would be on brand with a defensive amulet like the Dragoon's is. So, I've covered the, identities of the different types of jewel sockets. Square defensive, triangle utility, and circle offensive. Well, what's that going to leave for tier sockets? Well, this incredibly pixelated screenshot from Cam, another designer who works on the game, says that tier sockets are going to be used for just weird stuff, and that includes mana, useless energy, which is useful, but they would have to really ramp up how much energy is on those for those to be considered good, and then like fishing luck, which not going to use that on a damage set, right? And then item cards. Now, item cards have been on triangle sockets for quite some time. I purge my jewels all the damn time, so I don't really have much to show you, but I'm sure if I did one run of Eon of Vitavis, one of those hoes would drop a star spawn jewel, and it would be a triangle. And it would just give me a star spawn item card. And what I think they want to do is they want to move those in particular over to tier sockets so that it's not cutting into the utility, I guess, drop table. Because, these accuracy and the pip chance jewels, I don't have any on me right now, but those are really the only ones that people are going to use. And I don't think I would expect to see those really expanded upon much more. And like Rapier did say, you could get up to 5 with a certain setup, but no telling if that setup's going to be super damage oriented, so I don't think we're going to see too much expansion on them on the typical offensive and defensive sets. But triangle sockets, I think they're in an alright spot, even if we just have 2 to work with. But for tier sockets, I think having like an extra bubble if you're doing PvP. If you have a Balefrost jewel that you found and it goes on a tier socket, good for you. You can just socket that on your thing, and there you go. You have an extra bubble. So I think that's a fine enough place to leave the jewel identities for now. So hey, I'm excited for it. Well, thank you all for watching, and if you came here with the question, is this upcoming jewel audit going to be good? The answer to me is a resounding yes. I think it could lead to issues in advanced content, like, Jade's having too much health in PvP, but for the PvE population, I think it would be a fine addition, considering they are not held to the same stat caps as advanced content is. So, I don't really see it being too much of a problem. So if you're a PvE player, this is a very good change and something to look forward to in November. If you're a PvP player, the extra utility, I think, could make for some interesting sets. Like I mentioned earlier, having 30 pierce off of just jewels, I think, like you would be sacrificing defensive stats for that, but a storm could really make that work. And then same with, ice, being able to make defensive-oriented setups work well. So, thank you all for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave like 50 comments for the algorithm, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.